respected Khenpo Sodargye, esteemed experts, comrades, this year marks the 60th anniversary of the founding of China Academy of Chinese Medical Sciences. It is also a crucial year for us to carry forward traditional Chinese medicine and promote the development of Chinese herbal medicine. Today, we are very pleased that we are able to invite Khenpo Sodargye to come here and give a lecture. Today, Khenpo Sodargye will present a talk titled Medicine Buddha and Traditional Chinese Medicine. Let us give a warm round of applause to welcome Khenpo's lecture.
Respected Director Liu, dear and honorable teachers, and all the esteemed students present here today, this afternoon, let us take this opportunity to have a simple exchange and communication. For me, personally, this is actually my very first time ever coming to the highest institution of Chinese medicine in China. I feel that this place is truly remarkable, with so many medical professionals here. On one hand, you are researching and studying the inheritance and theories of traditional Chinese medicine, and at the same time passing on the knowledge and experience you have gained to those who are destined to receive it. This is an extremely rare and truly significant achievement and accomplishment indeed in today's world. Therefore, I personally feel that in my exchange with you all today, perhaps I may not be able to offer anything that will be especially satisfying to everyone. But on the other hand, I believe that many people present here, although we may come from different cultures, different regions, and have different interests, we share a common goal. And what is that? It is to cure diseases and save lives. Many of you here are engaged in work that should be considered the most noble. In my opinion, I truly believe that your profession is without a doubt the purest of all. Personally, my dream of practicing medicine, especially of becoming a doctor, began a long time ago. More than 30 years ago, when I had just started middle school, as I was about to graduate from middle school, I really wanted to become a doctor. At that time, I had a relative and older family member, an elderly and experienced doctor who practiced traditional Tibetan medicine. The year I was about to graduate from junior high school, that is the third year of junior high school, I went to him for treatment and found out that while he was curing other people's diseases, I developed a very strong aspiration. I thought to myself, in the future, I must become a doctor. Later, during the entrance exams, I actually hoped not to pass so that I could study medicine with him. But unexpectedly, I ended up passing the exam. In fact, this was actually a very significant turning point in my life. For me personally, my own wish was really to become a doctor. From then on, I saw that whether it was those studying Western medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, or Tibetan medicine, or even those studying Indian medicine in India, I always felt a deep sense of closeness, truly. Although I didn't end up becoming a doctor, I later comforted myself by saying, on the surface, I am a teacher with a monastic identity, but in reality, perhaps I can also be considered a kind of doctor. Because for more than 30 years, I have always tried my best to share some Buddhist teachings with others, and I have also been constantly working on helping to heal psychological issues. So in some ways, perhaps we share certain commonalities. As long as people have a common goal, a shared aspiration, a shared dream, in reality, their interests may not be exactly the same, and their cultures may not be exactly the same, but they still, indeed, have a common pursuit. Therefore, I think that today, as I am here, I would like to have some exchanges with all of you. We can also look for some common ground. So, what do I want to say? First of all, I'd like to share this with everyone. Traditional Chinese medicine and our own Tibetan medicine, in fact, actually have many notable similarities. Because I have also learned a bit about Tibetan medicine before. And when I was studying at the Buddhist Institute, I also studied some of it. During this process, I discovered that traditional Chinese medicine is actually based on inspection, listening and smelling, inquiry, and pulse taking. Everyone is very familiar with this. In fact, this is also indispensable in both the theory and practice of Tibetan medicine. In Tibetan medicine, the way herbs are gathered has many similarities with traditional Chinese medicine. There is a saying among renowned Tibetan doctors that for a highly skilled doctor, every plant growing on the mountain can be used as medicine. A skilled doctor treats all kinds of human illnesses. There are some direct and indirect treatment methods. Some of the herbs used in Chinese medicine are processed by carefully and slowly drying them in the sun or in the shade. This is also entirely present in Tibetan medicine. Additionally, pulse diagnosis in Chinese medicine is also highly valued in Tibetan medicine. In fact, I have studied some aspects of Tibetan pulse diagnosis myself. It involves understanding the condition of the body's internal organs, whether in medicine or surgery, all through very carefully and thoroughly examining the pulse pathways. Tibetan doctors can also carefully observe a patient's tongue coating, look at their eyes, and thoroughly examine their entire body. And just like in Chinese medicine, it is often emphasized to ask the patient about many different aspects of their condition, including their diet, their sleep patterns, and so on, such as these. In this way, I believe that many of the theories in Tibetan medicine are very similar to those in Chinese medicine. Its history should far surpass that of Western medicine. It is truly ancient. Everyone here is an exceptionally skilled specialist in this field. So you are all very clear about this. From my perspective, the treatments in Chinese medicine and Tibetan medicine are actually a kind of integrative, holistic treatment for the human body. Everyone often says that Western medicine treats the symptoms, while Chinese medicine treats the root cause. But this is just a saying. It sounds very good. Yet in reality, very few people truly understand and fully recognize this holistic approach in their hearts. Many people themselves actually lack confidence in it. As for me personally, I have great confidence in Chinese medicine, because whenever we study any subject in this world, first and foremost, you must have unwavering confidence in that subject yourself. With this kind of confidence, you will pursue it. And only with pursuit can you achieve results. I believe that for anything in this world, there are both holistic and partial approaches, as well as different methods to fully and thoroughly understand it. Tibetan medicine is the same as Chinese medicine in this regard. I think Lao Tzu from the Han region also said in the Tao Te Ching, human beings follow the earth. Earth follows heaven. Heaven follows the way. The way follows things as they are. This theory, the unity of heaven and humanity, nowadays, perhaps many people who pursue new sciences or Western medicine see it as something very simple and straightforward, nothing complicated at all. But this universe and things within it, our bodies are a world, our minds are a world as well. All things under heaven and earth, the entire world, are also a vast world. When these worlds come together, the various diseases that arise in our bodies actually have different causes and conditions, but these causes and conditions, whether we view them through Western medicine or certain phenomena, when we observe them, it is not necessarily, in fact, very advantageous. The current era is, in fact, a rather special and unique one. Some information can spread widely throughout the world, while some information, though valuable, may not be recognized by people. For example, certain theories in Chinese medicine and Tibetan medicine, when quantified in the modern world, face certain difficulties. Every phenomenon has its causes, conditions, and its results. Very few people can truly grasp the law of causes and conditions. Except for a very few individuals, it should be said that there are not many people in the world who can do this. Many scholars also say that the truth is held in the hands of a very small number of people. So now, what kind of approach should we use to truly understand the illnesses of sentient beings or the illnesses within our own minds? This is something that I am personally very deeply concerned about. It is truly important to me. My view is that in this world, there should be a great many different kinds of illnesses among sentient beings. But according to Tibetan medicine, there are actually, in total, 404 types of illnesses. You may have read the Buddha's teaching on Buddhist Medicine Sutra. In that sutra, many causes of illness are also discussed, and the different changes in spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and so on. I think that the illnesses of sentient beings mentioned here are something many people today need to understand. There are 101 illnesses that are actually caused by karmic forces from previous lives. No matter what you do to treat them in this lifetime, when certain karmic effects manifest, especially when very heavy karma emerges, there is simply no way to cure them. These 101 illnesses cannot be treated. Then there are another 101 illnesses which in this lifetime are actually caused by non-human beings or spirits harming us by performing certain specific prayers or particular special rituals at designated times. These can be transformed. And then there is another set of 101 illnesses. In fact, if a doctor provides treatment for these, such as various conditions, in many cases there is hope for a cure. But if you don't seek treatment, it could result in death. Then an additional 101 illnesses, which even if you don't deliberately treat them, won't cause any major problems. This includes things like simple colds or minor physical discomfort. These don't require special treatment. In Tibetan medicine, it can be said that this is the main way that four medical tantras identify or understand illnesses. I think many people here should be able to observe this as well. Nowadays, the illnesses that sentient beings are mainly related to mental afflictions to some extent. In Buddhism, it is said that sentient beings suffer from physical and mental illnesses. We all know what physical illnesses are. From head to toe, the entire body can potentially have all kinds of different diseases. These are typically treated with medication, but there is another kind of illness, the mental illness within us. What we call mental illness includes greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, jealousy, and many other emotions. This also includes conditions that people often mention nowadays, such as depression and autism, as well as various illnesses related to emotional instability. It's actually a disease of the heart. Many doctors have ways to deal with physical discomfort, such as prescribing medication, performing surgery, or giving infusions and so on. They rely on both traditional Chinese and Western medicine for treatment. However, many people suffer from psychological illnesses. When it comes to mental health issues, many people find they can't treat them. In fact, I believe that as a doctor, one should not only understand how to treat the body, but also how to treat the mind. For some psychological treatments, we don't necessarily need to learn specialized knowledge. We should learn some simple methods of psychological guidance. In this way, the approach would become significantly more meaningful, offering a deeper sense of purpose and understanding, and would also provide, all of you here should also be aware of something called the placebo effect. This is recognized not only in the medical community, but also in other areas of society. Some people are rather skeptical about it, while others think it is particularly rare. But regardless, it actually plays different roles in different contexts. For example, when a person receives some correct information psychologically, it can really bring you a kind of positive energy. If a person receives some incorrect information, then this incorrect information can bring negative effects to both their body and mind. This is a real observable phenomenon, something for the doctors present here. In your future practice of treating patients, I always feel that a doctor's words are extremely important. Why is that? Because some doctors are relatively young, and when facing patients, they just tell them directly and exactly how serious the illness is. After hearing this, the patient immediately loses all hope and becomes extremely distressed. Some patients, however, have a kind of skillful means. Some time ago, I went to visit a person from the religious community. Logically speaking, people in the religious community, whether you call it religious cultivation or spiritual practice, they possess a certain level of discipline. But his heart disease was extremely severe. And many doctors told him directly, you now have only exactly 1 month left to live. If you don't have surgery, it's very, very dangerous. Extremely dangerous. His life was critical. When it comes to dealing with illness and pain, this religious figure was a bit different from others. He said, I'm not afraid of death. I also know that my life will come to an end one day. But since the doctors say I might only have about a month left, I should prepare myself for this 1 month. However, his physical condition still remained rather fragile and delicate. I went to communicate with the doctors again, and during our conversation, I found a few points where, in fact, his condition wasn't as severe as it seemed. I came back and explained this to him, saying that actually, according to the doctors, while it's possible for things to be very serious, his situation hadn't reached that severity. After that, in my opinion, his overall condition improved a lot. What we now call the placebo effect is actually very important in the world. Therefore, today I want to make it clear to everyone here. In your future medical careers ahead, the words you use and your mindset for the people around you, especially as a professional, what you say is truly extremely important to others. At such times, we should choose our words with great skill and care. If we do not use skillful language, it is very possible that what you say could lead to negative consequences.
There's one more thing I'd like to mention. Our illnesses are actually, in many cases, somewhat related to the mind. Moreover, if we cultivate the Minda's traditional Chinese medicine, often says the highest level people cultivate the mind, those in the middle cultivate their energy, and the lowest level cultivate the body. This saying is also, in fact, strongly emphasized, particularly in Tibetan medicine. By nurturing the mind, whether it's for our overall illnesses or our mental resilience, it has an extremely powerful effect. There is a classic Buddhist scripture called the Sadharma Smritupasthana Sutra. What does the Sadharma Smritupasthana Sutra say about it? When the mind is pure, the blood is pure. When the blood is pure, the complexion is pure. When the complexion is pure, one's appearance is dignified and brings joy to others. This statement is very important. It means that if our mind is pure, then whatever happens in the world will seem like fleeting clouds to you. Whether we fall ill or something happens at home, or when unpleasant things happen around us, you won't treat them as particularly important matter. You should understand that all things in this world, in fact, are not permanent. They do not exist forever. They are constantly changing in an instant. Once you understand this principle, your mind will always remain in a state of purity. If your mind is pure, then all the so-called channels, qi, and essences in your body. Traditional Chinese medicine also often talks about the overall harmony and balance of yin and yang. And many important principles of yin and yang will be carefully balanced. At this time, your body will be healthy. Your appearance becomes dignified and pleasant. If your appearance is dignified, it will naturally bring joy to others. Sometimes we can tell a lot about a person's state just by looking at them. When someone has failed, been heartbroken, or lost their job, when many things happen to them, if their mental resilience is particularly weak at this time, their body is also in a state of chaos. Because of this chaotic state of the body, everything they do is a mess, always lacking any real sense of structure or organization. There never seems to be a clear starting point, and nothing ever truly comes to an end. At such times, people appear very pitiable and extremely unattractive. So sometimes in our daily lives, having a pure mind is extremely important. In fact, if the mind is pure, in Buddhism, this is considered the highest state of being. I think so-called Chinese medicine is also a bit different from Western medicine. In fact, the mind should be very pure and tranquil. I feel this way when I see people practice Western medicine. It seems like they speak very quickly and write very quickly too. No matter what they do, there's always this sense of being in a rush. But many practitioners of Chinese medicine have a certain quality which, as described in Buddhism, has a flavor of Zen. Speaking of Zen, whether it's the way they speak, walk, write, or even drink tea, they are always in a certain state of being. His state naturally brought upon us a kind of profoundly quiet, deeply peaceful feeling. This is one of the differences between Chinese and the Western medicine, whether in terms of the body, language, or behavior. They are different approaches to treatment. In this context, sometimes we should realize what exactly? As a medical professional, you should first ensure your own mind is calm and clear. When your mind reaches clarity and tranquility, on one hand, your own health, happiness, and success rate will all improve. If your mind is not regulated, not at ease, and not balanced in any way at all, then the things you do in those situations may not necessarily be considered truly reasonable or entirely justified. That's why Buddhism often talks about harmony, in particular, which is about a sense of balance and peaceful coexistence. Actually, I've looked into your traditional Chinese medicine before. What is Chinese medicine? It has two meanings. One is that Chinese medicine refers to the medicine of China, or Han, medicine of the Han people, called Chinese medicine. There's another meaning where Chinese, Rong, actually refers to the middle way. It's about maintaining balance in the body and maintaining balance in the mind. It's about maintaining balance among all things between heaven and earth. In Buddhism, this is called the Madhyamaka. The Madhyamaka is, in fact, not falling to the left nor to the right. In other words, we maintain moderation, we maintain balance. In this way, whatever we do, we need to maintain a sense of balance. especially in our actions and decisions. Just now, in a short period of time, Director Liu also mentioned this. Right now, our desires need to be maintained in some kind of balance. I really admire this point. If everyone in the world were to not eat, not drink water, and not have any beverages, that wouldn't work either. After all, we are living beings in this world. We need to survive. We need our lives in this material world. But we also can't let our desires become excess. If our desires are especially strong, then we will be extremely miserable. As everyone knows, nowadays, many people who break the law in society, most of them actually do so because, in fact, they can't restrain or control their desires. Some of them, on the other hand, can control their anger, committing murder and other such bad deeds. Therefore, in this world, in fact, actually, from the Buddhist point of view, a lot of happiness actually comes from adjusting our own mind. Much of our suffering is because we don't recognize the true nature of our own minds, and we let our minds do as they please, letting them run wild. This leads to all kinds of suffering in the world for people everywhere. You may also be aware of this many things in our daily life, including emotional issues, family problems, and even some social problems. Most of them are simply because people have not managed their own minds well. It is because the mind is uncontrolled that so many illegal and disorderly acts occur in society. At the same time, it may also lead to family discord and social insecurity, as well as all kinds of things in the world that cause people to experience fear, dread, and truly extreme, overwhelming suffering. Most of these are closely related to our inner state. In fact, I personally believe whether it is traditional Chinese medicine or Tibetan medicine, they use a different approach to treat our bodies, to balance and harmonize all things, and through this, gradually allow our minds to become calm, purified, and clear. This plays a very significant role. Therefore, there are certain important aspects that we should carefully study. So what exactly should we study? We should study the various social phenomena that are currently happening. At the same time, we also need to study the traditions that have been passed down for thousands of years, the extremely precious cultural treasures left to us by our ancestors. In fact, we shouldn't regard them as something outdated, ancient, or obsolete. There are actually some truly very precious and valuable things within them. Indeed, however, later generations have been brainwashed and significantly impacted by various Western cultures, especially under the increasing influence of trends like the so-called success studies and the economic market. Many people have set aside valuable and meaningful traditions and cultures, as well as a great deal of knowledge, perhaps forgetting them altogether. It's even possible that in a few hundred years, or even just a few decades, some of the especially precious things that still exist today may have all disappeared from our lives one by one. Currently, in Tibet, there are actually many extremely valuable Buddhist cultural traditions, traditional culture, and even some medical knowledge. But nowadays, many young people have not realized its true value. It's the same in the Han regions, I believe. Many young people are often influenced by Western culture or international cultural souk, impacts or assimilation, and the things that are inherently powerful and truly valuable to us are, little by little, gradually leaving us. At this point, we may have no choice but to pay attention to this. Also, what I want to talk about today is the medicine Buddha. In fact, the medicine Buddha, who is highly revered and respected in our Tibetan medical community, which has a long and rich tradition, every doctor has deep faith and reverence. Even in the ongoing process of practicing medicine, they often pray, make offerings, and recite some of the medicine Buddha's mantras, such as the main mantra, with devotion. Today, in this Academy of Sciences, some people may think that there are some mysterious meanings involved, while others might perhaps consider this particular situation to be, in their opinion, somewhat or even slightly unreasonable. Medicine is a very rigorous and precise science. Why rely on worshiping a certain idol or deity as a form of support, especially for emotional or spiritual comfort? This may seem a bit unreasonable, some people might think this way. But regardless of that, perhaps we need some positive perspectives, or we need to observe things from multiple dimensions. Because in this world, there are actually many things that we cannot understand just by relying on our own brains. There are many things that you cannot understand by relying on your own wisdom. Personally, I believe that praying to the medicine Buddha has a certain power. It is a kind of spiritual energy, which in Buddhism is often referred to as blessing or empowerment. But if you completely deny the existence of such blessings, I'm afraid many people's wisdom is limited. If you insist that the blessings of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas do not exist, that the power of medicine does not exist, and that the power of mantras does not exist, and that the many kinds of attraction in this world do not exist, there will probably be some difficulty. Although there are some things that we cannot see with our eyes, hear with our ears, or touch with our hands, within this space and within this time, there are countless forces at work. These forces may indeed play an extremely significant role in shaping our lives when nothing drastic is happening in your life. In fact, many people might not even notice them at all. But when you experience some special changes, maybe you didn't believe before, but at that moment, you will start to trust. For example, someone who has never believed in Buddhism, but when faced with great suffering, one might think, if there is a Buddha in this world, then I will pray to him and he will help me. Many people do not believe in Buddhism, but when it comes to the college entrance exam, they go to the temple to pray for blessings. They didn't believe at first, but at such a truly crucial moment, some of my friends who are usually very opposed to it, but when they are in a rather urgent or critical situation, including when certain authorities come to investigate them, they insist on performing some Buddhist rituals and ask that no one be told, saying, I didn't believe. Some say they don't believe. Some say otherwise. But generally speaking, when a person often reaches the point of greatest fear, you might, for example, when you're in the water and the boat unexpectedly capsizes or overturns, you might desperately try to grab onto something, anything you can find. So in this human world, when you are comfortable, happy, and relaxed, you think, I only believe what I see with my own eyes, and I won't acknowledge anything else. But when your body is truly in chaos, or when your life undergoes a dramatic change, you might start to think that beyond our world, there is an invisible force. I hope that this invisible force will bless me, that this invisible force will come to my rescue there, is this kind of wish. This is a kind of natural law, and also a kind of natural attraction. Regarding this point, I once read something called The Law of Attraction. It's a foreign film. And there's also a book. Actually, I noticed that many of the ideas in it are very similar to what we talk about in Buddhism when we focus our minds and pray to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. By sincerely and respectfully praying again and again in our hearts. We are granted a special kind of power. And whether it's the patient or ourselves, in the end, it often unexpectedly brings about healing or a sense of happiness. This is, without question, an absolutely undeniable fact. What is this called? The law of attraction, so-called law of attraction. When someone focuses their mind on a particular person, a certain matter, or a certain thing, if he keeps focusing like this, after a certain point, this kind of power will manifest. For example, if you really like someone or miss someone deeply, and you keep thinking about them repeatedly after a while, it seems as if this power naturally finds its way to that person. Or, after a point, you really want to buy a car. You really want to buy a house. Or if there's something you really want to do, and you keep focusing on it in your heart, on the surface, we can't see the mind's power. But in reality, it possesses a certain power. This power allows us to make prayers and supplications to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So, to be completely honest, if we really have some faith in the foreseeable future, then in the process of medical treatment or healing, I've seen that in many traditional Chinese medicine shops or hospitals, for example, there are often statues of the medicine Buddha. This is true in Han, Tibetan, and even in Qinghai, and also in other places, even abroad. Many traditional Chinese medicine establishments have statues of the medicine Buddha. Actually, this is a very good thing. If you have faith, you can regard him as a savior, possessing great compassion and mercy for all beings. If you don't have faith, it is still a form of cultural art. You can simply treat this statue as a work of art. Because these medicine Buddhas, many of you probably know, in Han Chinese Buddhism, inside the Mahavira Hall, the central figure is the Shakyamuni Buddha with Amitabha Buddha and the medicine Buddha on the left and right sides, respectively. On either side of the medicine Buddha are the Bodhisattvas moonlight and the sunlight. On either side of Amitabha Buddha are the Bodhisattvas Mahastama Prapta and Avalokitesvara. The medicine Buddha is the Buddha of the East, while Amitabha Buddha is the Buddha of the West. In terms of the present time, the Buddha of this world is Shakyamuni Buddha. Actually, in terms of their fundamental great compassion, there is no real difference between these Buddhas. However, when it comes to healing illnesses and alleviating suffering, the medicine Buddha, during his causal stage, made 12 great vows. Perhaps you have read the Sutra of the Original Vows and Merits of the medicine master Lapis Lazuli Light Tathagata, which is also called the Medicine Buddha Sutra. There are many versions of the Medicine Buddha Sutra in Chinese Buddhism. These include Yi Jing's version, Tang Xuanzang's version, and others by different masters. As far as I can remember, to the best of my recollection, there are approximately 3 different translations available. And all 3 of these versions are considered to be highly blessed. I think that in the future, if you truly want to treat patients during the course of your practice as a medical professional, you should not rely solely on your medical skills and knowledge. At the same time, you also need to have a kind of faith. I believe this faith is not superstition. I saw in the biography of Einstein said, although I am not a religious person, if I were to have a faith, I would choose to believe in Buddhism. Why is that? Because he believed that in the course of human history, if there is a religion that can truly keep up with science, it is Buddhism. That's what he said, after all. I think Einstein also regarded Buddhism as a kind of science. And in fact, this science is a principle that people today have great faith in. At this point, as a scientific worker, sometimes thinking that you have no faith may not necessarily be reasonable. Because many scientists in the West and many scientists and theologians in the East, when they conducted research throughout the long course of human history, ultimately discovered that in fact, there are still many things in this world that are worthy of trust and attention. This includes the medicine discussed in Buddhism as well as the science mentioned in Buddhism. Therefore, as scientists and medical professionals, we need to possess a kind of mysterious power as well as scientific knowledge, and we also need to have ancient traditions while at the same time keeping up with the present era. What I mean is, among those present here, including some of the young people's thinking tends to be relatively simple. At first, they don't believe in anything. When they're in school, they don't believe in anything. Then, as they grow older, gradually, there are many things they come to believe in. But we must never fall into superstition. So, what is superstition? It's when we believe in something that actually doesn't exist, treating it as if it does exist. That is a form of superstition. There's also the case where something does exist, but we think it doesn't exist. That is also a kind of superstition. Whether you have faith or not, you should simply observe yourself. You should have your own mind and wisdom. Otherwise, if we just listen to what people are saying nowadays, it can be a bit risky. Because nowadays, a lot of what people say isn't very reliable. Why do I say this? Some people, when they like someone, use exaggerated language to praise them excessively. If they don't like someone, they also use excessive language to slander that person. This is the way people behave in the internet age. You don't actually observe the person at all. For example, someone might be a good person, but you can't stand them, so you use language that is completely unreasonable and not based on fact, constantly mocking, belittling, and criticizing them. Or maybe someone is a bad person, but because you have a good personal relationship with them, you feel good about them, and just based on your feelings, you go out of your way to praise them. In fact, I think none of this aligns with reality. As people, we should have a correct attitude, especially in our daily lives, towards the objective existence of things, their apparent form, and their true nature. This is something worth mastering for ourselves as human beings living in this world. Although everyone knows that each of us may, in the course of life or work, end up doing things that go against our conscience. When each person comes into this world, no one wants to be bad. No one wants to be someone who isn't good. But because of the pressures of life, work, and all sorts of other reasons, sometimes we might end up doing bad things. Some people, for example, don't want to lie when they speak, but because simply in the course of your life, you are pressured by your family, your workplace, or by other people if you don't tell false speech. Sometimes it's hard for you to clear your own name, so you end up telling false speech quite often. In Buddhism, this is called expedient false speech. But whether you add convenience or not, in reality, we sometimes do tell these kinds of false speech. These are all issues and conflicts that arise between appearance and reality, or between ideals and practice, problems and conflicts that may arise in our daily lives. Many things may be rather trivial or boring, but these are things we have no choice but to face. Finally, what I want to say to everyone here at this moment right now is I'd like to offer you all one or two hopes. First, as practitioners of traditional Chinese medicine, you must persevere. I've seen many graduates from various schools who, in the end, can't stick with it and end up choosing something unrelated to their field, opting for other paths. They look for jobs wherever the pay is higher or wherever is more beneficial for their future prospects or family. Just look for this, of course. Under special circumstances, there's nothing unreasonable about this. But generally speaking, I think that as doctors, our very first dream is to truly help others. This is the most important thing, truly. As a doctor, I truly believe that you won't struggle in life as long as your demands aren't too high and you don't indulge in luxury goods every day. And if you don't have particularly high standards for your lifestyle, then in this world, people with medical knowledge will not face great difficulties in life. But what is most important for us is to understand the current state of inheritance and the tradition. Sometimes I see, whether it's us Tibetan doctors or you practitioners of Chinese medicine, in fact, there is a sense that the tradition is being broken, and it's uncertain whether it can be sustained for another 50 years. Now, I see that, in fact, some hospitals, let alone developing, are even currently struggling, in fact, to survive. At times like this, they have no choice but to rely on things like Western medicine and other methods. But from the perspective of true Chinese medical science, this may not be entirely reasonable. Although right now, on the basis of not abandoning tradition, we need innovation. And what else? We need reform. And what else do we need? We need to make use of modern science and technology. This is something we cannot do without. However, I see that in some traditional Chinese medicine colleges, Western medicine is the main focus, Chinese medicine supplementary. This exists. If things continue this way when it comes to inheriting what our ancestors passed down, there may come a time when we ourselves lose confidence in it. If we lack confidence ourselves, then it would be extremely difficult to pass it on to others. Therefore, during the process of learning, you must understand that the senior physicians, the great virtuous predecessors, you must truly grasp the principles they have spoken of and apply them in practice. Only in this way can we pass this civilization on to future generations. It's just like Tibetan Buddhism nowadays. Tibetan Buddhism, in fact, if no one actively promotes it or takes the time to teach it to others, it is likely the lineage will be broken and the tradition lost. This is a real possibility. Sometimes traditional Chinese medicine, under the huge tide of economic and social development, under such a trend, it is very possible that at a certain point, our ancient traditions will gradually decline or even disappear. This is indeed a real possibility. As a practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine, I often meet some of my Tibetan compatriots, and when they are engaged in Tibetan medicine, I also tell them, as doctors, we should not be driven by economic interests. Once your heart is filled only with thoughts of money, your practice of medicine may never be pure. Whether it's prescribing medicine or being irresponsible toward your patients, being irresponsible toward your own culture or toward future generations, by that time, our conscience will have been completely devoured by other desires. At that point, the noble and pure profession of being a healer in white will likely be compromised. So my first hope is that we should have a very pure heart, and we should have a steadfast mind. No matter what difficulties we encounter, we must always have a sense of responsibility. Since my destiny is connected with the great mission of traditional Chinese medicine, if there is such a connection, then no matter what kind of difficulties I face, I must persevere. Some time ago, I went to Montreal, Canada. That day, I wasn't feeling well, so I asked around. They said it apparently seemed to be run by someone from your school. There was a traditional Chinese medicine clinic nearby, and when I went inside, I noticed that it was very clean, tidy, and well organized. The husband did some massage and tuina, while his wife prescribed some Chinese herbal medicine. I took the medicine for one day. I was supposed to take it the next day too, but I didn't have time. After taking the medicine, I felt much better. The effect was immediate that very day. At the time, I asked some Westerners, Canadians, and they said that Chinese medicine from China is especially good because in most Western countries, their treatment methods involve having a family doctor. After the family doctor makes a diagnosis, if it's serious, then you go to a big hospital for further examination. But I saw that many Westerners were there getting Chinese herbal medicine. Later, I asked about it. I said, you're not in China, so why come here? They still have a strong desire for it. They said, we came here not for the purpose of making money. What we really hope is, on the one hand, that Chinese medicine culture, no matter the scale, can be present in the West. within the scope of what we are capable of, we want to carry on this tradition. Another aspect is that by integrating with Western culture ourselves, we can learn a lot of knowledge in the process. I think things like this, where the motivation isn't about money, just like a lotus that remains unstained by the mud. In such a big environment, in such a complex society as doctors, we should remain pure. I think that generally other people, if someone doesn't do well in business, it's only personal gain or loss. And for other people, if their work isn't going well, that's also a personal issue. But for a doctor, if their work isn't done well, they are playing with their lives. So it's extremely dangerous. If doctors and teachers do their jobs well, they can have tremendous power, help, and significance for countless people. But if doctors and teachers don't do their jobs well, it can be very harmful to humanity. From a personal perspective as well, Buddhism teaches that karma created can be extremely frightening because in their hands, there are often so many precious living lives. If you are not responsible for these lives, just like what happens in a very small number of hospitals nowadays, if you act for the sake of money, status, or various other motives, then that is a truly terrifying thing. So I believe that for teachers and students in medical schools, first, medical ethics are extremely important, and our traditions are also very, very important. Another point is that our hearts must always maintain a certain, what people nowadays call a sense of compassion, a need for compassionate heart. In Buddhism, great loving kindness and great compassion reflect Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva spirit and are very important. As a physician, it is also necessary to possess a compassionate heart. If we lack compassion, I'm afraid that much of our work may not actually be beneficial. There is a saying in the world that goes, the heart of a lawyer is the hardest, while the heart of a doctor is the softest. Because when lawyers are handling cases, regardless of whether the person is a murderer or a corrupt official, even though they absolutely and clearly know it is completely unreasonable, in order to win at any cost, they must essentially find ways to argue in various ways against the facts. So generally, lawyers, no matter what, in certain situations, their hearts are the hardest. As for doctors in particular, no matter when, their hearts are the soft. When they see someone pitiful, if it's someone they dislike or an enemy, they resent. If that person is critically ill today, you might still think, after all, he is my patient, and then you will do everything you can to save and treat him. I think this is actually also true for many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as I have seen mentioned in some sutras and commentaries. In the age of Dhamma decline, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas save people in the role of doctor. I once translated the extensive biography of Shakyamuni Buddha. When Shakyamuni Buddha was still on the path of training, he made a vow to become a doctor in the future. He felt that doing anything else, whether becoming a king, a minister, or even a judge, would result in creating a lot of karma. But if one becomes a doctor, it truly brings great benefit to sentient beings. So when Shakyamuni Buddha was still on the path of training, he made a vow to become a doctor in the future. If we do well in this profession, I think whether we study Chinese medicine, Western medicine, or any other kind, the power of a doctor is immense and also very meaningful. I used to have poor health and often went to see doctors. Whether it was a Chinese, Tibetan, or Western medicine doctor, every time I went to see a doctor, the first thing I would look at was the doctor's expression. If the doctor's expression was pleasant, I felt happy inside. If the doctor's attitude was bad and they seemed to come in aggressively for no reason, I would feel very distressed inside. But I didn't dare say anything. In the past, when I went to see doctors in some cities in in the Han region. I've also been bullied pretty by some doctors. But later on, I only wrote about it in words. Other than that, at the time, I was especially respectful. There was no choice but to be respectful. But later on, because I felt indignant, I might have, maybe some of you have read some of my books, I wrote about the attitudes and expressions of some doctors at that time, and also described how some doctors mistreated patients. I have also written about doctors who showed boundless, dedicated compassion toward their patients in their daily work, demonstrating great kindness and care. That too I have written about. Each of us, when we become patients ourselves, only then do we realize how important doctors are in this world. But as doctors, perhaps in big cities where there are too many patients every day, I went to see a doctor yesterday, and I noticed that the doctors seemed numb there, were just too many people. I thought to myself, if I were a doctor here, I would probably become numb too. Because if you have to see so many people all the time, in the end, it's impossible to always maintain your compassion. And if this goes on for a long time, it's bound to be difficult. I also really understand the mindset and behavior of many doctors. But overall, studying medicine is a truly extremely meaningful and important for humanity. On one hand, it gives many people who are suffering a chance to live again, which is a truly wonderful thing. It offers them an opportunity to start over in their lives for themselves. And that is something that is truly very good and positive. On the other hand, our precious tradition indeed needs to be very carefully carried on and preserved. So from both perspectives, we feel that this profession is truly great. But if we want to keep doing this, maybe many people won't necessarily understand. Maybe many people won't necessarily like it. And maybe many people won't necessarily praise it. But no matter what, the reason we do things shouldn't be for the sake of making money. It shouldn't be for the sake of fame either. It should be about whether it is meaningful or not. Yesterday, I met a Tibetan official. His position is actually quite good. But he said, I don't want to be an official anymore. I want to step down and become a... He used to study medicine. He said, either it's better for me to just be an ordinary doctor, or it's better for me to be a primary school teacher. I said, you might not be qualified to teach primary school. That's bad. No matter what, I think the most important thing in life is to be meaningful to all living beings. Sometimes, when it comes to the true value of life, maybe it's because I study Mahayana Buddhism. My perspective might not necessarily be the same as yours. Maybe you think that your family and personal life are the most important things in life. But I believe that being able to help the people around us is the most meaningful thing. This is also the blessing and power of medicine Buddha. And it is also what medical and scientific workers should do absolutely inescapable and unavoidable responsibility, one that cannot be ignored. If we have this sense, our whole society will become better and better step by step. All right, thank you.